Hello and welcome. Now it's time to leave the outside world behind and allow yourself a few moments of calm, of comfort. Find a cozy position. If you'd like, gently close your eyes. Take a deep breath in and slowly let it out. Once more, inhale and exhale. Feel your body beginning to relax, as if every part of you is being wrapped in a soft, warm breeze. Imagine you're in a peaceful place, maybe a quiet little corner in the heart of nature. The leaves are gently swaying in the trees. The sound of birds in the distance brings a sense of peace. And just nearby, there's a path that leads to the 100 Acre Wood. Very soon you'll meet an old friend, that little bear in a red shirt, always ready for an adventure, or a pot of honey. But for now, all you need to do is breathe, relax, and let yourself drift into the sweet story that's about to begin. If you've ever read another book about Christopher Robin, you might remember that he once had a swan, or perhaps the swan had him. It's hard to say, and he used to call that swan Pooh. That was a long time ago, and when they parted ways, they took the name with them, thinking the swan probably wouldn't need it anymore. So when Edward Bear mentioned he wanted a special, exciting name of his own, Christopher Robin immediately said, without a moment's hesitation, he's Winnie the Pooh. And that was that. Now that I've explained the Pooh part, let me explain the rest. You can't spend much time in London without eventually visiting the zoo. Some people go through the main entrance called entrance and rush past all the cages until they reach the exit, but the wiser ones go straight to see the animal they love the most and stay there for a while. So when Christopher Robin goes to the zoo, he heads straight to the polar bear enclosure. He whispers something to the third zookeeper from the left. The gate unlocks, and we wander down dim passageways and up steep staircases until we reach a special cage. The door opens, and out comes something brown and furry, with a delighted cry of "Oh, bear!" Christopher Robin runs straight into its arms. The bear's name is Winnie, proving what a fine name it is for a bear. The funny thing is, we can't quite remember whether Winnie was named after Pooh or Pooh after Winnie. We used to know, but we've forgotten I had written all that. When Piglet looked up with his small squeaky voice and said, "What about me?" "My dear Piglet," I replied, "this whole book is about you. Then why is it about Pooh?" He asked. You see, he's a little jealous. He thinks Pooh is getting a big introduction all to himself. Pooh is the favorite, of course, that's true. But Piglet is part of so many adventures Pooh misses. You can't very well bring Pooh to school without everyone noticing, but Piglet is so small, he fits right in your pocket. It's comforting to feel him there when you're unsure if 2 times 7 is 12 or 22. Sometimes he even peeks into the ink bottle and ends up getting more of an education than Pooh. But Pooh doesn't mind. Some have brains, and some haven't, he says. That's just how it is. Now everyone else is asking, what about us? So perhaps the best thing to do is stop writing introductions and begin the story, Chapter 1, in which we are introduced to Winnie the Pooh and some bees. And the story's begin her comes Edward Bear now. Bump, 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 down the stairs behind Christopher Robin. It's the only way he knows how to go downstairs, but sometimes he feels there might be a better way, if only he could stop bumping long enough to think about it. And then again, maybe not. Either way, here he is at the bottom, ready to be introduced to you. Winnie the Pooh, when I first heard his name, I said just as you were about 2, but I thought he was a boy. So did I, said Christopher Robin. Then you can't call him Winnie. I don't, he replied. But you said he's Winnie the Pooh. Don't you know what that means? Oh, I said quickly. Yes, now I do. And I hope you do too, because that's all the explanation you're going to get. Sometimes Pooh likes a little game as he comes down the stairs. Other times, he enjoys sitting quietly by the fire and listening to a story. How about a story? Said Christopher Robin. How about a story? I echoed. Could you, very sweetly, tell one to Pooh? I suppose I could, I said. What kind does he like? Stories about himself. Because he's that sort of bear, I see. So, would you very sweetly? I'll try, I said. And so I did, once upon a time, a very long time ago. Last Friday, Winnie the Pooh lived all by himself in the forest under the name of Sanders. What does under the name mean? Asked Christopher Robin. It means he had the name over the door in gold letters, and he lived under it. Pooh wasn't quite sure. Christopher Robin added. Now I am, said a growly voice. Then I'll go on, I said. One day, while walking in the forest, he came to an open clearing. In the middle stood a big oak tree. From the top of the tree came a loud buzzing noise. Pooh sat down, put his head in his paws, and began to think. That buzzing means something, he said to himself. You don't hear a buzzing like that unless something's making it. And the only reason I know for making a buzzing sound is because you're a bee. Then he thought for a while and said, and the only reason for being a bee that I know of is making honey. And then he said, and the only reason for making honey is so I can eat it. So he began to climb the tree. He climbed and he climbed and he climbed. And as he climbed, he hummed a little song. Isn't it funny how a bear likes honey? Buzz, buzz, buzz. I wonder why he does. And he climbed a little further, and a little further, and a little bit more. By that time, he had come up with another song. It's funny, thought a bear, if bees were bears, they'd build their nests at the roots, not the stairs. And if bees were bears, as odd as it sounds, we wouldn't need to climb so high off the ground. He was getting very tired by now, so he hummed a more mournful tune. He was almost at the top when he thought he could just lean on a branch. Crack! Oh, help! Said Pooh as he fell 10 feet onto the next branch. If only I hadn't, he began, as he bounced another 20 feet. "What I meant to do," he muttered as he tumbled upside down and thumped into another branch. "What I was trying to do, of course." He sighed as he slid down the next 6 branches. "This all comes, I suppose." He finished as he waved goodbye to the last branch and spun gracefully into a bush from liking honey so much. Oh, bother. He crawled out of the bush, pulled thorns from his nose, and began to think again. And the first person he thought of was Christopher Robin. The first person Pooh thought of was Christopher Robin, that clever boy, said Pooh. He'd know what to do. So he trotted off to find him. And sure enough, there he was sitting outside his house with boots on and a jar of honey beside him. "Good morning, Christopher Robin," said Pooh. "Good morning, Pooh Bear," said Christopher Robin. Pooh scratched his ear thoughtfully. "I wonder," he said, "if you've got such a thing as a balloon about you?" "A balloon?" said Christopher Robin. "Yes. I just said to myself, you never can tell when a balloon might come in handy, especially when you're looking for honey." "Well," said Christopher Robin, "I do happen to have one left over from my party yesterday," and he brought out a big blue balloon and a big green one. "Which would you like?" Pooh looked at them carefully. "I think the green one," he said. "Wouldn't you want to go with the blue one?" asked Christopher Robin. "It's the sky's color, after all." "But if I use the green one," said Pooh thoughtfully, "then the bees might think I'm part of the tree and not notice me." "That's a clever idea," said Christopher Robin. So together, they took the green balloon and went to the tall tree with the buzzing at the top. Pooh looked at the balloon, then at the tree, and then at himself. "Now, the only thing we need," he said, "is a little string, something I can hold on to as I float up." Christopher Robin found a string, tied it to the balloon, and helped Pooh hold it tightly in his paw. Then Pooh began to float upwards, slowly, gently rising into the sky, until he was level with the buzzing. "There," he called down. "I think they haven't noticed me yet." "Good," shouted Christopher Robin. Pooh drifted a little closer to the hive and listened. Buzz, buzz, buzz. He put on his most casual expression and tried to hum a little tune. Then he whispered, "Christopher Robin." "Yes," came the faint reply. "I think these bees might not be the right kind of bees." "Not the right kind?" asked Christopher Robin. "Yes," said Pooh. "You see, if they were the right kind of bees, they'd be making honey. And if they're the wrong kind of bees, then they might notice I'm not part of the tree." "Pooh, yes, you're dripping a little honey on the ground." "Oh," said Pooh, "that's probably just from my paw." And just then, buzz, buzz, zoom, a bee flew very close to Pooh's nose. Christopher Robin. He called, "Maybe I should come down now, but you haven't gotten any honey yet." "I know," said Pooh sadly, "but I might get stung instead." And that's when the bees began to fly faster. They buzzed around him, darting and diving. "Quick, pull me down, Pooh shouted so Christopher Robin grabbed the string and pulled. But balloons don't come down so easily when they've gone up. He tugged, and finally, with a soft pop, the balloon burst, and Pooh came tumbling down through the branches again. Bump, bump, bump. And there he was back on the ground. "Well," said Pooh, brushing leaves off his fur, "that was a clever idea. But I suppose some ideas are more clever than others." And with that, he reached for Christopher. Robin's jar of honey smiled a little bear smile and said, "At least I didn't come down empty-pawed." Chapter 2, in which Pooh pays a visit and gets into a tight-spouted bear, known to his friends as Winnie the Pooh or just Pooh, for short, was strolling through the forest one day, proudly humming to himself. That very morning, he had made up a little tune while doing his stoutness exercises in front of the mirror, stretching as high as he could, and then, "Oh, help," as he tried to touch his toes. After breakfast, he had hummed the tune to himself over and over until he'd memorized it, and now he was marching along, humming it properly and happily. Well, there he was, humming and walking, wondering what everyone else might be doing and what it might be like to be somebody else, when he came upon a sandy bank. And in the bank was a large hole. "Aha," said Pooh. "If I know anything about anything, this hole means rabbit, and rabbit means company, and company means food, and maybe someone to hum to." So he bent down, stuck his head into the hole, and called out, "Is anybody home?" There was a sudden scuffling noise from deep inside, followed by silence. What I said was, "Is anybody at home?" Pooh called a little louder. "No," said a voice. Then it added, "You don't need to shout so loud. I heard you perfectly well the first time." "Bother," said Pooh. "Isn't there anybody here at all?" "Nobody." Pooh pulled his head out of the hole and thought for a moment. Then he said to himself, "There must be somebody there, because someone said nobody." So he put his head back in and said, "Hello, Rabbit. Is that you?" "No," said Rabbit, in a different voice this time. "But isn't that Rabbit's voice?" "I don't think so," said Rabbit. "It's not meant to be." "Oh," said Pooh. He took his head out again, thought a bit more, then put it back in and said, "Well, could you kindly tell me where Rabbit is?" "He's gone to see his friend, Winnie the Pooh, who is a great friend of his, but I am Winnie the Pooh," said the bear, very surprised. "What sort of Pooh?" "Winnie the Pooh, are you sure?" asked Rabbit, even more surprised. "Quite sure," said Pooh. "Oh, well then, come in." So Pooh pushed and pushed and pushed his way into the hole, and at last he got in. "You're quite right," said Rabbit, looking him over. "It is you. Delighted to see you. Who did you think it was?" "Well, I wasn't sure. You know how it is in the forest. You can't just let anyone in. You have to be cautious. How about a little something to eat?" Pooh was always happy about a little something around 11 o'clock, and he was very glad to see Rabbit taking out dishes and mugs. And when Rabbit said, "Would you like honey or condensed milk with your bread?" Pooh was so excited he said, "Both." And then, so as not to seem greedy, he added, "But don't bother about the bread, please." And for a long time after that, he said nothing, until at last, humming a little sticky tune to himself, he got up, shook Rabbit's paw warmly, and said he must be going. "Must you?" said Rabbit politely. "Well," said Pooh, "I could stay a bit longer if you," and he tried very hard to look in the direction of the cupboard. "Well, actually," said Rabbit, "I was just about to go out myself." "Oh, well, then I'll be going. Goodbye. Goodbye if you're quite sure you don't want anything more. Is there anything more?" Pooh asked quickly. Rabbit lifted the lids of the dishes and said, "No, there isn't." "I thought not," said Pooh, nodding to himself. "Well, goodbye. I must be going." And so he started to climb out. He pulled with his front paws, pushed with his back paws, and in a little while, his nose was out in the open again. Then came his ears, then his front paws, then his shoulders, and then, "Oh, help," said Pooh. "I better go back." "Oh, bother," said Pooh. "I better go on. I can't do either," said Pooh. "Oh, help and bother." By this time, Rabbit also wanted to go out for a walk, and finding the front door blocked, he went out the back door and walked around to where Pooh was stuck. "Hello, are you stuck?" he asked. "And no," said Pooh carelessly. "Just resting, thinking, and humming to myself. Here, give us a paw." Pooh stretched out a paw, and Rabbit pulled, and pulled, and pulled. "Ow," cried Pooh. "You're hurting me." "The fact is," said Rabbit, "you're stuck. It all comes," said Pooh crossly, "of not having front doors big enough. It all comes," said Rabbit sternly, "of eating too much. I thought at the time," said Rabbit, "only I didn't like to say anything," said Rabbit. "That one of us was eating too much," said Rabbit, "and I knew it wasn't me." "Well, shall I go and fetch Christopher Robin?" Christopher Robin lived at the other end of the forest, and when he came back with Rabbit and saw Pooh's front half, he said, "Silly old bear," in such a loving voice that everyone felt quite hopeful again. "I was beginning to think," said Bear, sniffing slightly, "that Rabbit might never be able to use his front door again." "And I'd hate that," he said. "So would I," said Rabbit. "Use his front door again?" said Christopher Robin. "Of course he will. He'll use it again just as soon as we get you out." "Splendid," said Rabbit. "If we can't pull you out, Pooh, we might be able to push you back." Rabbit scratched his whiskers thoughtfully and said that once Pooh was pushed back in, he'd be back, and of course, nobody would be happier to see him than Rabbit would. But still, there it was. Some people lived in trees, and some lived underground. "You mean I might never get out?" said Pooh. "I mean," said Rabbit, "having got so far, it seems a pity to waste it." Christopher Robin nodded. "So there's only one thing to do," he said. "We shall have to wait for you to get thin again, How long does getting thin take? Asked Pooh anxiously. About a week, I should think. But I can't stay here for a week. You can stay here all right, silly old bear. It's getting you out that's the problem. We'll read to you, said Rabbit cheerfully. And I hope it doesn't snow, he added. And look, old fellow, you're taking up quite a bit of space in my house. Do you mind if I use your back? Legs as a towel rack? I mean, they're just sitting there doing nothing, and it would be very convenient. A whole week, said Pooh gloomily. And meals? I'm afraid no meals, said Christopher Robin, so you can slim down faster. But we'll read to you. Pooh sighed, then discovered he couldn't, as he was too tightly stuck. A tear rolled down his cheek as he said, Would you read a book? A comforting sort of book for a bear of very little brain in a very tight place? So, for a whole week, Christopher Robin read just such a book at Pooh's north end, while Rabbit hung his laundry on Pooh's south end. And in between, Pooh felt himself getting thinner and thinner, and at the end of the week, Christopher Robin said, now he took hold of Pooh's front paws, and Rabbit took hold of Christopher Robin, and all Rabbit's friends and relations took hold of Rabbit, and they all pulled together for a long time. Pooh only said out. And oh, and then, all of a sudden, he said pop, like a cork coming out of a bottle, and Christopher Robin, Rabbit, and all Rabbit's friends and relations fell backwards, and on top of them came Winnie the Pooh, free at last. Then, after a grateful wave to his friends, he went on his way through the forest, humming proudly to himself. But Christopher Robin looked after him fondly and said to himself, Silly old bear. Chapter 3, in which Pooh and Piglet go hunting and nearly catch a woozlepiglet, lived in a very grand house inside a beech tree, right in the middle of the forest, and Piglet lived right in the middle of the house. Beside the door was a broken piece of wood with the words Trespassers W carved into it. When Christopher Robin once asked Piglet what it meant, he said it was his grandfather's name and that it had been in the family for a long time. Christopher Robin told him that no one could be named Trespassers W, but Piglet insisted it was short for Trespassers Will, which was short for Trespassers William. His grandfather, apparently, had two names just in case he lost one. Trespassers, after an uncle, and William because, well, because of trespassers, I have two names too, said Christopher Robin casually. Well then, that proves it, said Piglet proudly, one bright winter day, as Piglet was sweeping the snow in front of his house. He looked up and saw Winnie the Pooh. Pooh was walking in circles, deep in thought, and when Piglet called out to him, Pooh didn't seem to hear and just kept walking. Hello, called Piglet. What are you doing? Hunting, said Pooh. Hunting what? Tracking something, Pooh said mysteriously. Tracking what? Piglet asked, coming closer. That's exactly the question. I've been wondering about that myself, said Pooh. I suppose I'll find out when I catch up to it. Now, look here. He pointed at the ground. What do you see? Two animals. This one, whatever it is, seems to have been joined by another one, whatever it is, and now they're walking together. Would you mind coming along with me, Piglet, in case they turn out to be hostile? Piglet scratched his ear in a thoughtful sort of way and said he had nothing planned until Friday and would be delighted to join, especially if it really tracks. Cried Piglet. Paul Marks. He squeaked with excitement. Oh, Pooh, do you think it could be a woozle? It might be, said Pooh. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. You never really know with Paul Marks. And with that, he continued following the tracks while Piglet, after watching him for a moment, trotted quickly after him. Pooh suddenly stopped and bent over the tracks with a puzzled expression. What's the matter? Asked Piglet. It's the funniest thing, said Pooh. Now it looks like there are's a woozle. You mean if it turns out to be two woozles? Asked Pooh. Well, either way, said Piglet. I'm free until Friday. So off they went together. There was a small grove of tall trees nearby, and it looked as if the two woozles, if that's what they were, had walked in a circle around the grove. So around the grove Pooh and Piglet went. Following their tracks, Piglet kept busy telling Pooh about his grandfather, Trespassers W., and how he used to deal with stiffness after tracking expeditions, and how he had trouble catching his breath in his later years, and other such interesting topics. Pooh, meanwhile, was wondering what a grandfather was exactly, and whether it might be two grandfathers they were now following, and if so, would he be allowed to take one home to keep, and what Christopher Robin would say about that. And still the tracks went on ahead. Suddenly, Pooh stopped and pointed excitedly in front of him. Look, said Piglet, hopping in surprise. And just to show he wasn't scared, he hopped once or twice more in a sort of exercise way. The tracks, said Pooh. A third animal has joined the first two. Oh, Pooh, do you think it's another woozle? No, said Pooh. The tracks are different. Maybe it's two woozles and one perhaps a whizzle. Or maybe two whizzles and one woozle. Either way, let's keep following them. So they continued on, feeling a bit more nervous now, in case the three animals ahead had bad intentions. Piglet really wished his grandfather T-Double were there instead of somewhere else, and Pooh thought how nice it would be to just stumble upon Christopher Robin by accident, just because he liked Christopher Robin so much. Then suddenly, Pooh stopped again and licked the tip of his nose in a refreshed sort of way, because he was feeling warmer and more anxious than ever before. There are 4 animals now. Do you see them, Piglet? Look at the tracks 3, shall we say, woozles, and 1 whizzle. Or perhaps another woozle joined the group. And sure enough, there they were. 4 sets of paw prints, crisscrossing and mingling, clear in some places, faint in others, but definitely 4 pairs of feet, I think, said Piglet, licking his nose too, and finding it no comfort at all. I think I've just remembered something very important that I forgot to do yesterday and can't possibly do tomorrow, so I really must go do it now. We'll do it this afternoon, and I'll come with you, said Pooh. Oh no, it's not the kind of thing that can be done in the afternoon, said Piglet quickly. It's a very morning sort of thing. It has to be done in the morning, preferably between the hours of. What time is it now? Just about noon, said Pooh, looking at the sun. Yes, well, it has to be done between 12 o'clock and 12:05, so if you'll excuse me. Wait, what's that? Pooh looked up at the sky and hearing a whistle, glanced into the branches of a large oak tree. There, high above, was a very familiar face. It's Christopher Robin. He said, "Oh, good. You'll be completely safe with him. Goodbye," cried Piglet, and trotted off home as fast as he could. Feeling very pleased to be out of danger again, Christopher Robin climbed down from the tree. "Silly old bear," he said. "What were you doing? First, you walked around the grove twice, by yourself. Then Piglet joined you, and you both walked around again. And just now, you were about to start a fourth time." "Wait a moment," said Pooh, lifting a paw. He sat down and thought as hard as he could. He placed his paw into one of the tracks, scratched his nose twice, and stood up again. "I see now," said Pooh. "I've been foolish and mistaken. I'm a bear of no brain at all. You're the best bear in the whole world," said Christopher Robin kindly. "Am I really?" said Pooh, brightening. And then, suddenly cheerful, he added, "Anyway, it's just about lunchtime." So he went home for lunch, Chapter 4, in which Eeyore loses a tail and Pooh finds Oneor. The old gray donkey was standing alone in a thistly corner of the forest. His front legs were spread slightly apart, his head tilted to one side, and he was deep in thought. Sometimes he thought sadly to himself, why, other times, what for? And occasionally, given that, though most of the time, he didn't quite know what he was thinking about. So when Winnie the Pooh came humming along, Eeyore was quite glad to stop thinking for a moment just to say, "How do you do?" in his usual gloomy voice. "And how are you?" said Pooh. Eeyore slowly shook his head. "Not very how," he replied. "I don't seem to have felt very how for quite some time now." "Oh dear," said Pooh. "I'm sorry to hear that. Let's take a look at you." Eeyore stood there, gazing down mournfully at the ground, while Pooh walked all the way around him. "Well now," said Pooh, surprised. "What's happened to your tail?" "What has happened to it?" said Eeyore. "It isn't there." "Are you sure?" "Well, either a tail is there or it isn't. You can't really make a mistake about that. And yours isn't. Then what is there?" "Nothing. Let's have a look," said Eeyore. He turned slowly toward the spot where his tail used to be, and when he found he couldn't quite reach it, he turned the other way until he was back where he started. Then he bent his head between his legs to look behind him, and finally gave a long, sad sigh. "I believe you're right," he said. "Of course, I'm right," said Pooh. "Well, that explains a lot," said Eeyore gloomily. "It explains everything. No wonder. You must have left it somewhere," said Pooh. "Someone must have taken it," Eeyore replied. "Typical of them," he added after a long pause. Pooh felt he ought to say something helpful, but wasn't quite sure. What? So instead, he decided to do something helpful. "Eeyore," he said solemnly, "I, Winnie the Pooh, will find your tail for you." "Thank you, Pooh," said Eeyore. "You're a real friend. Not like some." Winnie the Pooh set off to find Eeyore's tail. It was a beautiful spring morning in the forest. Fluffy little clouds danced across the bright blue sky, occasionally skipping in front of the sun as if to dim it for a moment, then sliding away to give another cloud a turn. Through and between them, the sun shone bravely on. The forest, which had been wearing its heavy winter coat, looked old and scruffy next to the fresh green ribbon the beeches had so proudly put on. Through woods and thickets, Pooh marched. Down open slopes of gorse and heather, over a rocky stream. Beds and up steep sandstone banks back to more heather, and so, at last, tired and a little hungry, he arrived at the 100-acre wood. For it was in the 100-acre wood that Owl lived, and if anyone knows anything about anything, said Pooh to himself, it's Owl who knows something about something. Or my name's not Winnie the Pooh, which it is. So there you are. Owl lived in the chestnuts, a rather grand old residence with more charm than most others, at least in Pooh's eyes, because it had both a knocker and a bell pull. Under the knocker was a sign that read, "Please ring if an answer is required." Under the bell pull was another that read, "Please knock if an answer is not required." These notices had been written by Christopher Robin, who was the only one in the forest who could spell. Owl, though wise in many ways, could read and write and spell his own name, but still got flustered by tricky words like measles and buttered toast. Winnie the Pooh read the signs very carefully, first left to right, and then right to left, just in case he missed anything. Then, to be completely sure, he knocked and pulled the bell, pulled and knocked again, and called out loudly, "Owl, I need an answer. It's me, Pooh Bear." And the door opened, and Owl looked out. "Hello, Pooh," he said. "How are things?" "Terrible and sad," said Pooh, "because Eeyore, who is a friend of mine, has lost his tail. And he's rather gloomy about it. Can you kindly tell me how to find it for him?" "Well," said Owl, "the customary procedure in such cases is—" "What does custardy procedure of cake mean?" asked Pooh. "I'm a bear of very little brain, and long words bother me. It means the thing to do, as long as it means that, I don't mind," said Pooh humbly. "The thing to do is this. First, offer a reward." "Hold on," said Pooh, raising a paw. "What do we do with? What was it you said? Did you sneeze just now?" "I did not sneeze," Yes, you did, Owl. Excuse me, Pooh, but I did not. One doesn't sneeze without knowing it. Well, one can't know unless something was sneezed. What I said was, first, offer a reward. There you go again, said Pooh, sadly, a reward. Owl said loudly, we write a notice, saying we'll give something nice to whoever finds Eeyore's tail. I see, said Pooh, nodding. Speaking of nice things, he added dreamily, I usually have a little something around this time of day. He glanced longingly at the cupboard in the corner of Owl's room. Just a small lick of condensed milk, or a smackerel of honey, well. Then Owl continued, we write the notice and post it all over the forest, a smackerel of honey. Pooh murmured to himself, or not, as the case may be. He sighed deeply and did his best to listen, but Owl kept talking, using longer and longer words, until eventually he circled back to say that the person to write the notice should be Christopher Robin. He wrote the ones on my front door, you. No. Did you see them, Pooh? Pooh had been nodding and shaking his head alternately with his eyes closed, and having said, yes, the last time, he now said, no, not really knowing what Owl was talking about. You haven't? Said Owl, surprised. Come have a look now. So they stepped outside, and Pooh looked at the knocker and the notice beneath it. Then he looked at the bell rope and the notice under that, and the longer he looked at the bell rope, the more he felt like he'd seen something like it somewhere before. Nice bit of bell rope, don't you think? Said Owl. Pooh nodded. It reminds me of something, he said, but I just can't think what. Where did you get it? Oh, I found it in the forest. It was hanging over a bush. At first, I thought someone lived there, so I rang it. Nothing happened. Then I rang it again very loudly, and it came right off in my hand. Since no one seemed to want it, I brought it home, and Owl, said Pooh solemnly, you made a mistake. Somebody did want it. Who? My dear friend Eeyore. He was very attached to it, said Pooh sadly. He was attached to it, so with those words, he unhooked it and carried it back to Eeyore. And when Christopher Robin nailed it back in its rightful place, Eeyore trotted through the forest, swishing his tail so happily that Pooh felt quite funny inside and had to hurry home for a little snack to steady himself. Half an hour later, as he wiped his mouth, he sang proudly to himself, Who found the tail? I did, said Pooh, at 1:45, though really, it was 11:15. I found the tail. Chapter 5, in which Piglet meets a heffalump day, when Christopher Robin, Winnie the Pooh, and Piglet were all talking together. Christopher Robin finished the bite he was eating and said, quite casually, I saw a heffalump today. Piglet, what was he doing? Asked Piglet. Just heffalumping along, said Christopher Robin. I don't think he saw me. I've seen one once, said Piglet. At least, I think I did. Although, maybe I didn't. So did I, said Pooh, trying to imagine what a heffalump looked like. "You don't see them very often," said Christopher Robin, matter-of-factly. "Not now," said Piglet. "Not this time of year," said Pooh.so. Then they talked about something else until it was time for Pooh and Piglet to walk home together. At first, as they strolled along the path that bordered the 100-acre wood, they didn't say much to each other. But when they reached the little stream and helped each other across the stepping stones and could walk side by side again on the soft heather, they began chatting cheerfully about this and that. "If you know what I mean, Pooh," said Piglet. "Exactly what I was thinking, Piglet," said Pooh. "But on the other hand," said Piglet, "we mustn't forget." "Very true," said Pooh, although I had forgotten for just a moment. And then, when they reached the 6 pine trees, Pooh looked around to make sure no one else was listening and said in a very serious voice, "Piglet, I've decided to do something." "What have you decided, Pooh?" "I've decided to catch a heffalump." Pooh nodded several times as he said this and waited for Piglet to say, "How?" or "Oh, Pooh, you couldn't possibly," or something helpful like that. But Piglet didn't say anything. The truth was, he rather wished he'd thought of it first. "I'll do it," said Pooh, after waiting a little longer, "by means of a trap. And it has to be a clever trap. So you'll have to help me, Piglet." "Pooh," said Piglet, feeling happy again. "I'll help." And then he asked, "How shall we do it?" "Well, that's just it." "How?" said Pooh. And they sat down together to think. Pooh's first idea was that they should dig a very deep hole, and then the heffalump would fall into it. "Why?" asked Piglet. "Why what?" said Pooh. "Why would he fall in?" Pooh rubbed his nose thoughtfully with his paw and said the heffalump might be walking along, humming a little tune, looking up at the sky, wondering if it was going to rain, and wouldn't notice the deep hole until he was halfway down it, by which point it would be too late. Piglet thought that was a very good trap, but what if it was already raining? Pooh rubbed his nose again. He hadn't thought of that. But then he brightened up and said that if it was raining already, the heffalump would be looking at the sky, wondering if it would clear up, and still wouldn't see the hole until it was too late. Piglet said that now the point had been explained. It did indeed sound like a clever trap. Pooh felt quite proud when he heard this, and thought the heffalump was practically caught already. There was just one more thing to consider. Where should they dig the very deep hole? Piglet said the best place would be somewhere a heffalump was just about 12 inches ahead of where he'd fall in. "But then he'd see us digging," said Pooh. "Or if he were looking at the sky, he might get suspicious," he added, "if he happened to glance down." He thought for a while and then said, rather sadly, "It's not as easy as I thought. I suppose that's why heffalumps are hardly ever caught." "That must be it," said Piglet. They sighed and stood up. After removing some thistle prickles from themselves, they sat back down again. All the while, Pooh kept telling himself that if only he could think of something, He was sure a very clever brain could catch a heffalump if only it knew the right way. "Suppose you wanted to catch me," he said to Piglet. "How would you do it?" "Well," said Piglet, "I'd do it like this. I'd make a trap and put a honey pot in it, and you'd smell it and go in after it, and I'd go in after it," said Pooh excitedly. "Very carefully, of course, so I wouldn't hurt myself. And I'd get to the honey pot, and I'd lick the edges first, pretending there wasn't any more, you know. And then I'd walk away and think for a bit, and then I'd come back and start licking in the middle of the pot, and then, yes. Well, never mind all that. There you'd be, and I'd catch you. Now, the first thing is, what do heffalumps like to eat? I think acorns. Don't you? Let's get lots, Pooh. Are you listening?" Pooh had drifted off into a happy dream and woke with a start. "Honey," he said firmly, "is a much more trappy thing than acorns." Piglet didn't think so, and they were just about to argue, and Piglet realized that if they used acorns, he would have to go find them, but if they used honey, Pooh would have to give up some of his own. "All right, honey it is," said Piglet. Just as Pooh was about to say, "All right, acorns, honey," Piglet repeated thoughtfully, as if the idea were entirely his own, "I'll dig the hole while you go fetch the honey." "Very good," said Pooh, and off he went. When he got home, he went straight to his cupboard. He climbed on a chair, reached up to the top shelf, and took down a large jar of honey. It had HONEY written on it, but just to be sure, he took off the paper lid and looked inside. It certainly looked like honey, but you never know, said Pooh. "I remember my uncle once saw a cheese that looked exactly this color, so he stuck in his tongue and gave it a big lick." "Yes," he said, "it is. No doubt about it. Honey all the way to the bottom. Unless, of course, someone put cheese at the very bottom, just as a joke. Best to make sure, just in case. Heffalumps might not like cheese the way I do." He gave a deep sigh. "I was right. It's honey all the way down." Having confirmed this, he took the jar back to Piglet. Piglet looked up from his very deep hole and asked, "Did you get it?" "Yes," said Pooh, "but it's not a full jar," and he tossed it down to Piglet. "No, it's not," said Piglet. "Is that all you had?" "Yes," said Pooh, for it was. Piglet placed the jar at the bottom of the hole, climbed out, and they walked home together. "Well, good night, Pooh," said Piglet when they reached Pooh's house. "We'll meet at 6 in the morning by the pine trees and see how many heffalumps we've caught. 6 o'clock, Piglet. Do you have any rope?" "No, why?" "To bring them home with, of course." "Oh, I suppose you can whistle for them. Some come, some don't. You never know with heffalumps." "Well, good night, said Piglet, and off he went to his house. Trespassers W. Now, Pooh made his preparations for sleep. But a few hours later, as the night began to fade, Pooh woke up with a hollow feeling inside. He had felt it before and knew exactly what it meant. He was hungry. So he went to the cupboard, climbed on the chair, reached the top shelf, and nothing. That's funny, he thought. I'm sure I had a full jar of honey. A full jar, full to the brim. And it said, honey on it, so I'd know it was honey. Very funny, and he began pacing back and forth, humming a little tune to himself. Very, very funny, 'cause I know I had some honey, with a label saying honey, and the jar was full, by golly. Now it's gone. It's disappeared. It's so strange. It's really weird. He had hummed this to himself 3 times when he suddenly remembered. He had used it in the clever trap to catch a heffalump. Bother, said Pooh. All this trouble, just to be nice to heffalumps, and he went back to bed, but he couldn't sleep. The more he tried, the more awake he felt. He tried counting sheep sometimes that helped, but it didn't. Then he tried counting heffalumps. That was worse. Every heffalump he counted went straight to a Pooh honey jar and gobbled it all up. He lay there miserably. But when the 587th heffalump smacked his lips and said, lovely honey, don't think I've ever had better, Pooh couldn't take it any longer. He jumped out of bed, dashed out of the house, and hurried straight to the 6 pine trees. The sun was still in bed, but the sky over the 100 Acre Wood was beginning to brighten, like it was stretching and about to kick off the covers. In the pale morning light, the pine trees looked cold and lonely. The very deep pit looked deeper than ever, and the honey jar at the bottom looked mysterious, just a shape, nothing more. But as he got closer, his nose confirmed it was honey, and his tongue came out, polishing his lips, ready. Bother, said Pooh, sticking his nose into the jar. A heffalump's been eating it. Then he paused. Oh no, it was me. I forgot, indeed. He had eaten most of it, but there was still a bit left at the bottom. So he pushed his head in and began to lick. Meanwhile, Piglet woke up. As soon as he opened his eyes, he said to himself, oh, then bravely, yes. Then, even more bravely, certainly. But he didn't feel brave. The word bouncing around in his mind was heffalumps. What was a heffalump like? Was it fierce? Would it come when whistled for? How would it come? Did it like pigs? If it did like pigs, did it matter what kind? Of pig? Would it make any difference if the pig had a grandfather named Trespassers William? Piglet didn't know the answers to any of these questions, and he was going to see his first heffalump in about an hour. Of course, Pooh would be with him, and 2 are braver than 1. But what if heffalumps were fierce to both pigs and bears? Maybe it would be best to pretend he had a headache and couldn't make it to the 6 pine trees. Or what if nothing happened at all and the whole morning was wasted? What should he do? Then he had a clever idea. He'd go very quietly to the 6 pine trees, peek into the trap, and if there was a heffalump, he'd go straight back to bed. If there wasn't, he would end single quotes T.SO off He went dot a T first. He thought there wouldn't be a heffalump. Then he thought there might be. And the closer he got, the more sure he was, because he could hear it heffalumping like never before. "Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear," said Piglet. He wanted to run, but now that he was so close, he had to take just one peek. So he crept to the edge of the trap and looked down. All this time, Pooh had been trying to get the honey jar off his head. The more he wiggled, the tighter it got. "Bother," he said. Or, "Oh, help." Or mostly, "Ow." He tried banging it on things, but he couldn't see what he was banging it on, so it didn't help. He tried climbing out of the trap, but he couldn't see anything but the inside of the jar, and not much of that. At last, he lifted his head, jar and all, and let out a loud, echoing cry of sadness and despair, and at that very moment, Piglet looked down. "Help! Help!" screamed Piglet. "A heffalump! A horrible heffalump!" And he ran. He ran and ran, shouting all the way, "Help! Help! A terrible heffalump! Awful! Awful! Oh dear! A dreadful heffalump!" He didn't stop until he reached Christopher Robin's house. "What's the matter, Piglet?" asked Christopher Robin, who had just gotten out of bed. H. Piglet could hardly breathe. "A heffalump." "Where?" "Over there." Piglet pointed with a trembling paw. What did it look like? It had the biggest head you've ever seen, Christopher Robin. Huge like nothing. A giant sort of. Nothing. Like a pot. "Well," said Christopher Robin, putting on his shoes, "I'd better go see." "Come on." Piglet wasn't afraid if Christopher Robin was with him, so off they went. "I can hear it. Can't you?" whispered Piglet anxiously as they got closer. "I can hear something," said Christopher Robin. It was Pooh banging the jar against a tree root. "There," said Piglet. "Isn't it awful?" And he grabbed Christopher Robin's hand tightly. Then suddenly, Christopher Robin started to laugh. And he laughed and laughed and laughed. And just as he was still laughing, crash, Pooh's head hit the tree root smash. The jar broke and Pooh's head popped out. Piglet realized how very silly he'd been. He was so embarrassed, he ran straight home and climbed into bed with a headache. But Christopher Robin and Pooh went home together for breakfast. "Oh, Bear," said Christopher Robin, "how I do love you." "So do I," said Pooh. Chapter 6, in which Eeyore has a birthday and gets 2%. Eeyore, the old gray donkey, was standing by the side of the stream, staring down at his reflection in the water. "Pathetic," he said. "That's what it is. Just pathetic." He turned and slowly walked 20 steps along the stream, crossed it with a splash, and walked slowly back on the other side. Then he looked at himself again. "As I thought," he said. "No better from this side. But no one cares. No one ever does. Pathetic, that's what it is." There was a crackling of twigs behind him, and out came Pooh. "Good morning, Eeyore," said Pooh. "Good morning, Pooh Bear," said Eeyore gloomily. "If it is a good morning, which I doubt, oh, come now, what's the matter?" asked Pooh. "Nothing, Pooh Bear, nothing at all. Not everyone can, and some of us don't. That's all there is to it, don't what?" said Pooh, scratching his nose. "Gaiety, song and dance, merrymaking." "Oh," said Pooh. He thought for a while, then asked, "What exactly is merrymaking?" Being cheerful, Eeyore went on, drearily. "It's a French word. Means cheerful. Not that I'm complaining. That's just how it is." Pooh sat down on a large stone and tried to make sense of it. It sounded like a riddle, and he wasn't very good at riddles, being a bear of very little brain. So instead, he sang Coddleston Pie. "Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. A fly can't bird, but a bird can fly. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie." That was the first verse. When he finished, Eeyore didn't exactly say he didn't like it, so Pooh very kindly sang the second. "Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie. A fish can't whistle, and neither can I. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie." Eeyore still didn't say anything, so Pooh hummed the third verse softly to himself. "Pie. Why does a chicken? I don't know why. Ask me a riddle, and I reply. Coddleston, Coddleston, Coddleston Pie." "Exactly," said Eeyore. "Now, sing Tiddly Palm or Let's Pick Daisies in May. Go ahead and enjoy yourself, but I am enjoying myself," said Pooh. "Some can," said Eeyore, "but what's the matter?" Pooh asked again. "You seem so sad, Eeyore." "Sad? Why should I be sad? It's my birthday. The happiest day of the year. Your birthday?" said Pooh, surprised. "Of course. Can't you tell? Look at all the presents I've gotten." He waved a hoof at the empty ground. "Look at the birthday cake. Candles. Pink sugar." Pooh looked to the right and then to the left. "Presents," he said. "Birthday cake. Where? Can't you see them?" "No," said Pooh. "Neither can I," said Eeyore. "Joke," he added. "Ha ha!" Pooh scratched his head, puzzled. "But is it really your birthday?" he asked. "Yes." "Oh, well. Happy birthday, Eeyore. And many happy returns to you, Pooh Bear. But it's not my birthday. No, it's mine." "But you just said, many happy returns." "Well, why not? No sense in both of us being miserable on my birthday, is there?" "Oh, I see," said Pooh. "It's bad enough," said Eeyore, his voice cracking slightly, "being miserable. Myself, with no presents, no cake, no candles, and no proper notice taken. But if everyone else is going to be miserable too." That was too much for Pooh. "Wait here," he called, and off he ran, as fast as he could go, back to his house because he suddenly realized that Eeyore needed a present, and he needed it right away. He could always think of something suitable later. Outside his house, Pooh found Piglet jumping up and down, trying to reach the knocker. "Hello, Piglet," said Pooh. "Hello, Pooh," said Piglet. "What are you trying to do?" "I was trying to knock," said Piglet. "I just arrived. Let me do it for you," said Pooh kindly. He reached up and knocked on the door. "I've just seen Eeyore," he began, "and poor Eeyore is very gloomy because it's his birthday and nobody has noticed. He's very sad. You know how he gets." And there he was. And whoever lives here sure is taking their time answering this door. He knocked again. "But Pooh," said Piglet, "this is your house." "Oh," said Pooh, "so it is. Well, let's go in." Once inside, the first thing Pooh did was check the cupboard to see if he had a small jar of honey left. He did, so he took it out. "I'm giving this to Eeyore," he explained, "as a present." "What are you going to give him?" "Could I give it with you?" asked Piglet. "From both of us? That wouldn't be a very good plan." "All right, I'll give him a balloon. I've got one left from my party. I'll go fetch it now, shall I?" "That, Piglet, is a splendid idea. Just the thing to cheer him up. No one can be gloomy with a balloon." So Piglet trotted off in one direction, and Pooh went in the other, carrying his honey jar. It was a hot day, and he had a long way to go. He hadn't gone halfway before he began to feel a strange sensation that ran from the tip of his nose to the soles of his feet. It was as if someone inside him was whispering, "Pooh, it's time for a little something." "Oh, bother," said Pooh. "I didn't realize it was that late." So he sat down, took the lid off the honey jar, and said to himself, "Good thing I brought this along. Lots of bears, setting out on a day like this, wouldn't have thought to bring a snack." And he began to eat. "Now then," he thought, licking the last bit from the bottom of the jar, "where was I going? Ah, yes, Eeyore." He got up slowly. Then, all of a sudden, he remembered he'd eaten Eeyore's birthday present. "Oh, bother," said Pooh. "What shall I do? I have to give him something." He couldn't think of anything for a while. Then he thought, "Well, it is a very nice jar, even without the honey. If I clean it out really well and ask someone to write 'Happy Birthday' on it, Eeyore could keep things in it. That might be useful." So as he was passing through the 100-acre wood, he stopped by Owl's house. "Good morning, Owl," he said. "Good morning, Pooh," said Owl. "Many happy returns of Eeyore's birthday," said Pooh. "Oh, is that what today is?" "Yes." "What are you giving him, Owl?" "What are you giving him, Pooh?" "I'm giving him a useful jar to keep things in. And I was wondering, is this it?" said Owl, taking it from Pooh. "Yes. And I was wondering, someone's." been keeping honey in this," Owl observed. "You can keep anything in it," said Pooh honestly. "It's very useful that way. And I was wondering, you want me to write happy birthday on it, I suppose?" "Yes, please," said Pooh. "My handwriting is wobbly. It's good, but it wobbles, and the letters get in the wrong places. Would you write it for me? It's a nice jar," said Owl, turning it over. "I couldn't give it to him from both of us, could I?" "No," said Pooh. "That wouldn't be a good plan. I'll go wash it first, and then you can write on it." Pooh washed the jar and dried it carefully, while Owl licked the end of his pencil and tried to remember how to spell birthday. "Can you read, Pooh?" Owl asked, a little anxiously. "There's a notice outside my door that Christopher Robin wrote. If he tells me what it says, I can read it. Well, I'll tell you what this says, and then you'll be able to read it too." So Owl wrote, and this is what he wrote: "Hypey papey bthooth, thooth thufty," with love from Pooh written on it. That's what all the writing means. It's for putting things in. There, when Eeyore saw the pot, he looked quite excited. "Well now," he said, "I believe my balloon will fit perfectly in this pot." "Oh no," said Pooh. "Balloons are much too big to go into pots. What you do with a balloon is hold it." "Not mine," said Eeyore proudly. "Watch, Piglet." And while Piglet looked around sadly, Eeyore took the balloon in his teeth and gently placed it into the pot. Then he took it out, set it on the ground, picked it up again, and carefully put it back in. "It does fit," said Pooh. "It really does. It fits," said Piglet. "And it comes out too." "Exactly," said Eeyore. "Goes in and out like nothing at all." "I'm so glad," said Pooh happily, "that I thought of giving you a useful pot to put things in, and I'm so glad," said Piglet happily, "that I thought of giving you something to put in a useful pot." But Eeyore wasn't listening. He was far too busy taking the balloon out and putting it back in again. "As happy as can be, didn't I give him anything?" asked Christopher Robin, a little sadly. "Of course you did," I said. "You gave him. Don't you remember?" "A little. A little. I gave him a paint box. A little box of paints to paint things with." "That's right. Why didn't I give it to him this morning?" "You were so busy getting his party ready. He had a cake with icing and 3 candles, and his name written in pink sugar." "Oh yes, I remember now," said Christopher Robin. Chapter 7, in which Conga and Roo arrive in the forest and Piglet takes a bath. No one seemed to know where they came from, but there they were in the forest, Conga and little Roo. When Pooh asked Christopher Robin, how did they get here? Christopher Robin said, "The usual way, if you know what I mean." Pooh, who didn't, said, "Oh." Then he nodded twice and said, "The usual way." "Ah." So he went to visit his friend Piglet to see what he thought about it. At Piglet's house, he found Rabbit So the three of them sat down and talked it over. What I don't like about it, said Rabbit, is this. Here we are, you, Pooh, and you, Piglet, and me, and suddenly, and Eeyore, said Pooh, and Eeyore, and then all of a. Sudden and owl, said Pooh, and owl, and suddenly oh, and Eeyore, said Pooh. I almost forgot him. Here we are, said Rabbit, slowly and carefully, all of us. And then one morning, we wake up, and what do we find? We find a strange animal among us. An animal we've never even heard of before. An animal who carries her family in her pocket. Suppose I carried my family in my pocket, how many pockets would I need? 16, said Piglet. 17, isn't it? Said Rabbit. And one more for a handkerchief, 18. 18 pockets in one suit. I don't have time for that. There was a long, thoughtful silence. Then Pooh, who had been frowning very hard for a while, said, I counted 15. What? Said Rabbit. 15. 15 what? Your family. What about them? Pooh rubbed his nose and said he thought Rabbit had been talking about his family. Was I? Said Rabbit, distractedly. Yes, you said. Never mind, Pooh, said Piglet impatiently. The point is, what are we going to do about Conga? Oh, right, said Pooh. The best thing, said Rabbit, would be this. We steal Baby Roo and hide him. Then, when Conga says, Where's Baby Roo? We say, Aha, aha, said Pooh, practicing. Aha, aha. Of course, he added, we could say, Aha, even if we hadn't stolen Baby Roo, Pooh, said Rabbit kindly. You haven't got a brain. Well, I know, said Pooh humbly. We say, aha, so that Conga knows we know where Roo is. Aha means, we'll tell you where Roo is if you promise to leave the forest and never come back. Now don't talk while I'm thinking. Pooh went to a corner and tried saying, aha, in different voices. Sometimes it sounded like what Rabbit meant, and sometimes it didn't. I suppose it just takes practice, he thought. Will Conga need to practice too, to understand? There's just one thing, said Piglet, shifting nervously. I was talking to Christopher Robin, and he said Conga is generally considered one of the fiercer animals. I'm not usually afraid of fiercer animals, but it's well known that if one of them is separated from her child, she becomes as fierce as two of the fiercest animals, in which case, aha, might be a rather silly thing to say, Piglet, said Rabbit, picking up a pencil and licking the tip. You haven't got courage. It's hard to be brave, said Piglet, sniffling a little, when you're only a very small animal. Rabbit, who had started writing quite busily, looked up and said, That's exactly why you'll be useful for the adventure ahead. Piglet was so excited at the idea of being useful, he forgot to be afraid. And when Rabbit went on to say that Kangas were only fierce in the winter months, but generally good-natured the rest of the time, Piglet could barely sit still. He was so eager to start being useful right away, "And me?" said Pooh sadly. "I suppose I won't be any use." "Don't worry, Pooh," said Piglet comfortingly. "Maybe next time, without Pooh," said Rabbit solemnly, sharpening the pencil, "this adventure would be impossible." "Oh," said Piglet, trying not to look disappointed. But Pooh went off to a corner and said proudly to himself, "Impossible without me. That sort of bear." "Now listen, all of you," said Rabbit when he'd finished writing. Pooh and Piglet sat very still, mouths open in anticipation. And this is what Rabbit Reed planned to capture baby Rugineural observations. Conga runs faster than any of us, even me, more general observations. Conga never takes her eyes off Roo, except when he's safely buttoned into her pocket. Therefore, if we're going to capture Roo, we must have a great advantage, since Conga runs faster than any of us, even me. See number 1, an idea. If Roo were to jump out of Kanga's pocket and Piglet were to jump in, Conga wouldn't notice the difference, because Piglet is a very small animal. As Roo, but Conga must be looking the other way first, so she doesn't. See Piglet jump in. See number 2, another idea. If Pooh were to talk to her very excitedly, she might look the other way for a moment, then I could run off with Roo quickly, and Conga wouldn't realize the difference until later. Well, Rabbit read that with great pride, and for a while afterward, nobody said anything. Then Piglet, who had been opening and closing his mouth silently, finally managed to say in a hoarse voice, "And then, what do you mean?" When Conga does notice the difference, then we say, "Aha!" All 3 of us. Yes. Oh, what's wrong, Piglet? "Nothing," said Piglet, "as long as we all say it. I wouldn't want to say, 'Aha,' all by myself. It wouldn't sound the same. By the way," he added, "are you absolutely sure about that thing with the winter months?" "The winter months?" "Yes, Kanga's only being fierce in winter." "Oh, yes, that's perfectly true. Now, Pooh, do you see what you have to do?" "No," said Pooh. "Not yet," he said. "What do I do?" "Well, you just have to talk to Conga a lot, so she doesn't notice anything." "Oh, talk about what?" "Anything you like. You mean like maybe a little bit of poetry or something." "Exactly," said Rabbit. "Splendid. Now let's go." So off they went in search of Conga. Conga and Roo were spending a peaceful afternoon in a sandy part of the forest. Little Roo was practicing his tiny jumps in the sand, hopping in and out of mouse holes. Conga was fussing nearby, saying, "Just one more jump, dear, and then we really must go home." And just then, who should come up the hill but Pooh. "Good afternoon, Conga." "Good afternoon." "Pooh, look at me jump," squeaked Roo, and he tumbled into another hole. "Hello, Roo, old fellow. We were just about to go home," said Conga. "Good afternoon, Rabbit." "Good afternoon, Piglet." Rabbit and Piglet, who had come up from the other side of the hill, said good afternoon and hello. Roo asked them to watch him jump, so they stayed and watched. And Conga watched too. Oh, Conga, said Pooh, after Rabbit had winked at him twice. I don't know if you're interested in poetry. Not much, said Conga. Oh, said Pooh. Roo did another jump. And then we really must go home. There was a short silence while Roo disappeared into another hole. Go on, whispered Rabbit behind his paw. Speaking of poetry, said Pooh, I made up a little something on my way here. It goes like this. Let me see. How delightful, said Conga. Now, Roo dear, you'll love this bit of poetry, said Rabbit. You'll absolutely love it, said Piglet. You should listen very carefully, said Rabbit. So you don't miss anything, said Piglet. Oh, yes, said Conga, but she was still watching Roo. How did it go, Pooh? Asked Rabbit. Pooh cleared his throat and began. Verses written by a bear of very little brain and Monday. When the sun is hot, I wonder quite a lot. Now is it true, or is it not, that what is which, and which is what? On Tuesday, when it hails and snows, the feeling in me grows and grows that hardly anybody knows if those are these or these are those. On Wednesday, when the sky is blue and I have nothing else to do, I sometimes wonder if it's true that who is what and what is who on Thursday, when it starts to freeze and frost is hanging from the trees. How easily one sees with ease that these are whose, but whose are these? On Friday, yes, quite lovely, said Conga, not waiting to hear what happened on Friday. Just one more jump, Roo dear, and then we really must be going. Rabbit nudged Pooh quickly. Speaking of poetry, said Pooh hastily. Have you ever noticed that tree right over there? Where? Said Conga. Now, Roo. Just behind you, said Pooh, pointing past Conga. No, said Conga. Now hop in, dear, and let's go home. You really should look at that tree, said Rabbit. Shall I help you up, Roo? And he took Roo in his paws. From here, I can see a bird in it, said Pooh. Or is it a fish? You should see that bird from here, said Rabbit. Unless it's a fish, it's not a fish. It's a bird, said Piglet. Then that's what it is, said Rabbit. Is it a starling or a blackbird? Asked Pooh. That's the whole question, said Rabbit. Is it a blackbird or a starling? And then, finally, Conga turned her head to look. And the moment her head was turned, Rabbit said loudly, In you go, Roo. And Piglet jumped into Conga's pouch, and Rabbit dashed off with Roo in his paws as fast as he could go. Why, where's Rabbit? Said Conga, turning back around. Are you all right, dear Roo? Piglet made a squeaky little Roo noise from deep inside Conga's pouch. Rabbit had to go, said Pooh. I think he suddenly remembered something important, and Piglet. I think Piglet remembered the same thing. Well then, we'd better get home, said Conga. Goodbye, Pooh. and in 3 great bounds, she was gone. Pooh watched her as she disappeared. I wish I could hop like that, he thought. Some can, and some can't. That's just how it is. But there were times when Piglet really wished Conga couldn't. Many times while walking through the forest, he had wished he were a bird. But now, bumping along at the bottom of Kanga's pouch, he thought, if this is flying, I don't think I'll ever enjoy it. And as they went up, he said, ugh. And as they came down, he said, ow. And he said, ugh-ow, ugh-ow, ugh-ow all. The way to Kanga's house, of course. As soon as Conga unbuttoned her pouch, she saw what had happened. For a moment, she thought she was frightened. But then she knew she wasn't, because she was absolutely sure that Christopher Robin would never let anything bad happen to Ro-O.So. She said to herself, if they're playing tricks on me, I'll just play along. Now, dear Roo, she said, as she pulled Piglet out of her pouch, it's time for your nap. Aha, said Piglet, doing his best after such a terrifying journey. But it wasn't a very good aha, and Conga didn't seem to understand what he meant. Bath first, said Conga cheerfully. Aha, said Piglet again, looking anxiously around for the others. But they weren't there. Rabbit was at home playing with baby Roo and liking him more every minute. And Pooh, who had decided to become a Conga, was still in the sandy spot at the top of the forest, practicing his hopping. I'm really not so sure, said Conga thoughtfully, that a cold bath wouldn't be just the thing tonight. Wouldn't you like that, dear Roo? Piglet, who never liked baths much, gave a long, shivering tremble and said in the bravest voice he could manage, Conga, I think it's time we had a serious talk. What a clever little Roo, said Conga as she got the bath water ready. I'm not Roo, shouted Piglet. I'm Piglet. Yes, dear. Of course you are, said Conga soothingly, and doing such a good Piglet voice too. So clever, she added, as she pulled a big yellow bar of soap from the cupboard. What will he think of next? Can't you see? Cried Piglet. Haven't you got eyes? Look at me. I am looking, dear Roo, said Conga a bit sternly. And you remember what I told you yesterday about making faces. If you keep making faces like Piglet, you'll grow up looking like Piglet, and then just think how sorry you'll be. Now into the bath, and don't make me have to say it again. Before he knew what was happening, Piglet was in the bath, and Conga was scrubbing him firmly with a large loofah. Ow, squealed Piglet. Let me out. I'm Piglet. Don't open your mouth, dear, or you'll get soap in it, said Conga. Ow. See what I told you. You did that on purpose. Piglet grumbled. Once he could talk again, and then accidentally swallowed another mouthful of soapy loofah. That's right, dear. Just keep quiet, said Conga, and in another minute, Piglet was out of the bath, being wrapped in a towel. Now, said Conga, here's your medicine, and then it's bedtime. Medicine? Said Piglet. To help you grow big and strong, dear. You don't want to grow up small and weak like Piglet, do you? Just then, there was a knock at the door. Come. In said Conga, and in came Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin. Christopher Robin, cried Piglet. Tell Conga who I am. She keeps saying I'm Roo. I'm not Roo, am I? Christopher Robin looked at him very carefully and shook his head. You can't be Roo, he said, because I just saw Roo playing at Rabbit's house. Well, said Conga, imagine that. Me making a mistake like that. There you go, said Piglet. I told you I'm Piglet. Christopher Robin shook his head again. Oh, no, you're not Piglet, he said. I know Piglet very well, and he's a very different color. Piglet started to say it was only because he just had a bath, but then thought maybe he'd better not. And just as he opened his mouth to say something else, Conga popped a spoonful of medicine in and patted him on the back, telling him it really did taste nice once you got used to it. I knew he wasn't Piglet, said Conga. I wonder who he could be. Maybe a relative of Pooh's, said Christopher Robin. Like a nephew, or an uncle, or something like that. Conga agreed that was probably it, and said he'd need a name. I'll call him Poodle, said Christopher Robin. Henry Poodle for short, and once it was decided, Henry Poodle wriggled out of Kanga's arms and jumped to the floor. To his great joy, Christopher Robin had left the door open. Never had Henry Poodle Piglet run so fast in his life, and he didn't stop running until he was very close to his own little house. But when he was still about 100 yards away, he stopped running and rolled the rest of the way to get his own nice, comfortable color back, and so Conga and Roo stayed in the forest. Every Tuesday, Roo spent the day with his great friend Rabbit, and every Tuesday, Conga spent the day with her great friend Pooh, teaching him to hop. And every Tuesday, Piglet spent the day with his great friend Christopher Robin, and so everyone was happy again. Chapter 8, in which Christopher Robin leads an expedition to the North Pole one fine day. Pooh wandered up to the top of the forest to see if his friend Christopher Robin happened to be interested in bears. At breakfast that morning, a simple meal of honeycomb, lightly spread with jam, he had suddenly thought of a new song. It began like this: Sing ho, for the life of a bear. When he got that far, he scratched his head and thought to himself, that's a very good beginning to a song, but what about the second line? He tried singing ho 2 or 3 more times, but it didn't seem to help. Maybe, he thought, it would be better if I sang loud for the life of a bear. So he tried it, but that didn't sound quite right either. Well then, he said, I'll just sing the first line twice. And maybe if I sing it very quickly, I'll find myself singing the 3rd and 4th lines before I even have time to think of them. That would make a good song. Now then, sing ho, for the life of a bear. Sing ho, for the life of a bear. I don't much care if it's snowing or blowing. I've got sweet honey on my nose that's glowing. I don't care a bit if it's freezing or warm. I've got honeyed paws and a tummy so calm. Sing ho for a bear. Sing ho for Pooh. And have a little something in an hour or two. He was so pleased with this song that he sang it all the way to the top of the forest. If I keep singing much longer, he thought, it'll be time for that little something, and the last line won't be true anymore. So he turned it into a hum. Christopher Robin was sitting outside his door, pulling on his big boots. As soon as Pooh saw the boots, he knew an adventure was about to happen. He wiped the honey from his nose with the back of his paw and straightened himself up as best he could, trying to look ready for anything. "Good morning, Christopher Robin," he called. "Hello, Pooh Bear. I can't seem to get this boot on. That's no good," said Pooh. "Would it help if you leaned on me a little?" "Maybe. I keep pulling so hard I fall backward." Pooh sat down, dug his feet into the ground, and pushed against Christopher Robin's back. Christopher Robin pushed back, and finally, with one great tug, the boot slid on. "There," said Pooh. "What shall we do next?" "We're all going on an expedition," said Christopher Robin, standing up and brushing himself off. "Thanks for the help, Pooh. An expedition?" asked Pooh excitedly. "I don't think I've ever been on one. Where are we going?" "An expedition, silly old bear. It has an X in it." "Oh," said Pooh. "I know, but he really didn't. We're going to discover the North Pole." "Oh," said Pooh again. "What's the North Pole?" "It's just something you discover," said Christopher Robin casually, not exactly sure himself. "Oh, I see," said Pooh. "Are bears any good at discovering it?" "Of course they are. And Rabbit, and Conga, and everyone. That's what. An expedition is a long line of everybody. You'd better go tell the others to get ready while I check my rifle. And we'll all need to bring provisions." "Bring what?" "Food," said Christopher Robin. "Oh, food. Why didn't you just say so?" Pooh smiled. "I'll go tell them." The first one he found was Rabbit. "Hello, Rabbit, is that you?" "Let's pretend it isn't," said Rabbit, "and see what happens. I have a message for you. I'll give it to him. We're all going on an expedition with Christopher Robin." "What kind of one?" "While we're on it, a sort of boat, I think," said Pooh. "Oh, that kind. Yes. And we're going to discover a pole or something. Or maybe a mole. Anyway, we're going to discover it." "We are we?" said Rabbit. "Yes. And we need to bring things to eat, just in case we want to eat them. Now I'm off to Piglet's house. Would you mind telling Conga?" He left Rabbit and hurried over to Piglet's. Piglet was sitting on the ground outside his house, happily blowing on a dandelion, wondering whether it would be this year, next year, someday, or never. He had just decided it was never, and was trying to remember what it was, hoping it wasn't something fun when Pooh appeared. "Oh, Piglet," said Pooh excitedly. "We're going on an expedition, all of us with food and everything, to discover something." "Something?" said Piglet, a bit nervously. "Or something. Nothing fierce," Pooh added. Christopher Robin didn't say anything about fierce, just that it had an X in it. "There's an X in fierce, isn't there?" said Piglet sincerely. "There is in teeth, but if Christopher Robin is going, then I don't mind anything before." Long they had all gathered at the top of the forest, and the expedition began. First came Christopher Robin and Rabbit, then Piglet and Pooh, followed by Conga with Roo in her pocket, and Owl. Then came Eeyore, and finally, in one long line, all of Rabbit's friends and relations. "I didn't invite them," Rabbit explained carelessly. "They just came. They always do. They can march at the end, behind Eeyore. What I say," said Eeyore, "is that it's unsettling. I didn't want to come on this X. Whatever Pooh said, I only came to be agreeable. And now I'm here. And if I'm the tail of the X, whatever we're doing, then I'll be the tail. But if every time I want to sit down and rest, I have to push away half a dozen of Rabbit's smaller friends and relations, then it's not an X. Whatever. It's just a noisy muddle. That's what I say. I see what Eeyore means," said Owl. "If you ask me, I'm not asking anyone," said Eeyore. "I'm just telling everyone. We can search for the North Pole, or we can play gather nuts in May with the end of an anthill. Makes no difference to me." There was a shout from the front of the line. "Let's go," called Christopher Robin. "Let's go," called Pooh and Piglet. "Let's go," called Owl. "We're starting," said Rabbit. "I must go." And he hurried to the front to walk beside Christopher Robin. "All right," said Eeyore. "We're going. Don't blame me." So off they all went to discover the pole. And as they walked, they chatted about this and that, everyone except Pooh, who was busy making up a song. "This is the first verse," he told Piglet, once he was ready. "The first verse of what?" "My song." "What song?" "This one." "Which one?" "Well, if you listen, Piglet, you'll hear it." "How do you know I'm not listening?" Pooh didn't have an answer for that, so he simply started to sing. They all set off to find the pole, Owl and Piglet, Rabbit and Eeyore. It's something you find, or so I've been told, by Owl and Piglet and Rabbit and all, Eeyore, Christopher Robin, and Pooh, and Rabbit's relations went along too. And where the pole was, nobody knew. So sing out, "Hey," for Owl, Rabbit, and crew. "Shh," said Christopher Robin, turning to Pooh. "We're coming to a dangerous place." "Shh," said Pooh, turning quickly to Piglet. "Shh," said Piglet to Conga. "Shh," said Conga to Owl, while Roo softly whispered "shh" to himself several times. said Owl to Eeyore. Shh, said Eeyore in a dreadful tone to all of Rabbit's friends and relations. And shh, they all hurriedly whispered along the line, one after another, until it reached the very last one. Now, the very last and smallest friend and relation was so upset to find the entire expedition shh-ing him that he dived headfirst into a crack in the ground, stayed there for 2 days until the danger had passed, then hurried home and lived quietly ever after with his aunt. His name was Alexander Beetle. They came to a stream that twisted and tumbled between steep, rocky banks, and Christopher Robin immediately saw how dangerous it was. Just the sort of place, he explained, for an ambush. What sort of bush? Whispered Pooh to Piglet. Typically a ghost bush, said Pooh. My dear Pooh, said Owl in his superior way, don't you know what an ambush is? Owl, said Piglet sternly. Pooh's whisper was a perfectly private whisper, and there was no need. An ambush, said Owl, is a sort of surprise. Like a ghost bush, sometimes, said Pooh. An ambush, Piglet began, taking over, is a kind of surprise. If people suddenly jump out at you, that's an ambush. Yes, it's an ambush, Pooh, when people jump out at you, Piglet clarified. Pooh, now understanding what an ambush was, said that once a gorse bush had jumped out at him when he fell from a tree, and it took him 6 days to get all the prickles out. We're not talking about gorse bushes, said Owl, slightly annoyed. I am, said Pooh. They were now moving carefully up the stream, hopping from rock to rock, until they came to a spot where the banks widened and each side had a flat, grassy patch perfect for resting. As soon as Christopher Robin saw it, he shouted, "Halt!" and everyone sat down for a rest. I think, said Christopher Robin, we should eat all our provisions now. That way we won't have to carry them. Eat all our what? Asked Pooh. All the food we brought, said Piglet, already helping himself. Good idea, said Pooh, and started eating too. Everyone has something, right? Asked Christopher Robin, his mouth full. Everyone but me, said Eeyore. As usual, he glanced around with his gloomy expression. I suppose none of you happen to be sitting on a thistle. I think I am, said Pooh. Ouch. He stood up and looked behind him. Yes, I was. I thought so. Thank you, Pooh. If you're quite finished with it. He moved to Pooh's spot and began munching. Not good for them, you know, sitting on them, he said, chewing thoughtfully. Takes all the life out. Keep that in mind next time, all of you. A little consideration, a little thought for others, makes all the difference when lunch was over. Christopher Robin whispered something to Rabbit, and Rabbit said, yes, yes, of course, and the two of them wandered a bit farther up the stream together. I didn't want the others to hear, said Christopher Robin. Exactly, said Rabbit, looking important. It's just, I was wondering, do you happen to know what the North Pole looks like? Well, said Rabbit, stroking his whiskers. Now you're asking. I used to know once, but I've sort of forgotten, said Christopher Robin casually. Funny thing, said Rabbit, but I've sort of forgotten too, even though I knew once. I suppose it's just a pole stuck in the ground. Oh, it's definitely a pole, said Rabbit, because it's called a pole. And if it's a pole, well, then it must be stuck in the ground. Where else would you put it? Yes, that's what I thought. The only question, said Rabbit, is where it's stuck. That's what we're trying to find, said Christopher Robin. They went back to the others. Piglet was lying on his back, peacefully asleep. Roo was washing his face and paws in the stream, while Kanga proudly explained to everyone that this was his very first time washing his face all by himself. All was telling Kanga a fascinating anecdote full of long words like encyclopedia and rhododendron, which Kanga wasn't really listening to. I don't hold with all this washing, muttered Eeyore. This modern nonsense of behind. The ears. What do you think, Pooh? Well, said Pooh, I think, but we'll never know what Pooh thought, because just then there was a sudden squeal from Roo, a splash, and a loud cry of alarm from Kanga. All that noise over a bit of washing, grumbled Eeyore. Roo's fallen in, cried Rabbit, and he and Christopher Robin rushed to the rescue. Look at me swimming, squealed Roo from the middle of a pool. Then he was carried off by a little waterfall into the next one. Are you all right, dear Roo? Called Kanga anxiously. Yes, said Roo. Look at me. And off he went again, down the next waterfall and into another pool. Everyone was doing something to help. Piglet, now fully awake, was hopping up and down making little, oh dear, noises. Al was explaining that, in case of sudden and temporary immersion, the key was to keep the head above water. Kanga was running along the bank crying, "Are you sure you're all right, dear Roo?" To which Roo replied from whichever pool he was in, "Look at me swimming." Eeyore had turned around and was dangling his tail into the first pool where Roo had fallen, muttering to himself, "All this washing. But grab my tail, little Roo, and you'll be fine." Christopher, Robin, and Rabbit rushed past Eeyore, calling to the others up ahead. "All right, Roo, I'm coming," called Christopher Robin. "Grab something to cross with downstream, some of you boys," shouted Rabbit, but Pooh was already doing just that, 2 pools down from Roo. He had found a long stick, and Kanga came to grab one end of it. Together, they held it across the bottom of the pool, and Roo, still proudly bubbling, "Look at me swimming," bumped into it and was scooped out. "Did you see me swimming?" cried Roo excitedly as Kanga scolded and dried him off. "Pooh, did you see me? That's called swimming, what I was doing." "Rabbit, did you see?" "Swimming." "Hi, Piglet." "Piglet, guess what I was doing?" "Swimming." "Christopher Robin, did you see me?" But Christopher Robin wasn't listening. He was staring at Pooh. "Pooh," he said, "where did you find that stick?" Pooh looked down at the stick in his paws. "I just found it," he said. "Thought it might come in handy. So I picked it up, Pooh," said Christopher Robin solemnly. "The expedition is over. You've found the North Pole." "Oh," said Pooh. Eeyore was sitting with his tail in the water when everyone came back to him. "Somebody tell Roo to hurry," he said. "My tail's getting cold. Not that I want to complain, although I suppose I just did. I don't mean to make a fuss, but there it is. My tail is cold. Here I am," squeaked Roo. "Oh, there you are. Did you see me swimming?" Eeyore lifted his tail from the water and swung it back and forth. "Just as I thought," he said. "Lost all feeling. Gone completely numb. That's what happened. Numb. Well, as long as nobody minds, I suppose it's all right. Poor old Eeyore." "I'll dry it for you," said Christopher Robin. He took out his handkerchief and began rubbing it. "Thank you, Christopher Robin. You're the only one who seems to understand about tails. That's the trouble with some of the others. No imagination. A tail's not just a tail to them, it's just an extra little bit sticking out. Don't worry, Eeyore," said Christopher Robin, rubbing as hard as he could. "Is it feeling better? Feels more like a tail again. Might even belong to me now, if you know what I mean." "Hello, Eeyore," said Pooh, coming up with his stick. "Hello, Pooh. Thanks for asking, but I think I'll be able to use it again in a day or two." "Use what?" asked Pooh. "What are we talking about?" "I wasn't talking about anything," said Pooh, looking puzzled. "My mistake again. Thought you were saying how sorry you were that my tail had gone all numb, and whether there was something you could do to help." "No," said Pooh. "Wasn't me." He paused to think, then added helpfully, "Maybe it was someone else. Well, thank him for me when you see him." Pooh looked hopefully at Christopher Robin. "Pooh found the North Pole," said Christopher Robin. "Isn't that wonderful?" Pooh looked bashfully at the ground. "Is that it?" said Eeyore. "Yes," said Christopher Robin. "That's what we were looking for." "Yes," said Pooh. "Oh," said Eeyore. "Well, anyway, it didn't rain," he added. They planted the stick into the ground, and Christopher Robin tied a note to it. North Pole. Discovered by Pooh. Pooh found IT. Then they all went home again. And I think, but I'm not quite sure, that Roo had a nice hot bath and went straight to bed. But Pooh went back to his house and, feeling very proud of what he had done, had a little something to eat to celebrate Chapter 9, in which Piglet is entirely surrounded by water. It rained, and it rained, and it rained. Piglet told himself that. Never in all his life, and he was, goodness knows how old, 3 or 4, had he seen so much rain. Days and days and days of it. If only, he thought as he looked out the window, I had been at Pooh's house, or at Christopher Robin's, or at Rabbit's when the rain began, then I'd have had company all this time instead of sitting here alone with nothing to do but wonder when it will stop. And he imagined being with Pooh, saying, "Have you ever seen such rain, Pooh?" And Pooh replying, "Isn't it awful, Piglet?" And Piglet asking, "Do you think it's raining like this at Christopher?" Robins and Pooh saying, "I expect poor Rabbit's completely flooded by now." It would have been such fun to talk about it, and there really isn't much point in having an exciting thing like a flood if you have no one to share it with, because it was quite exciting. The little dry ditches Piglet had played in so often had turned into streams. The little streams he had splashed through were now rivers, and the river itself, between whose steep banks they had once played so happily, had overflowed and spread out so far and wide that Piglet was beginning to wonder if it might soon reach his bed. "It's a little anxious," he said to himself. Being a very small animal entirely surrounded by water, Christopher, Robin, and Pooh could escape by climbing trees. Conga could escape by hopping. Rabbit could escape by digging. Owl could escape by flying. And Eeyore could escape by making a loud noise until someone came to rescue him. And here I am, thought Piglet, surrounded by water, and I can't do a thing. It kept on raining, and every day the water crept a little higher, until now it was almost at Piglet's window, and he still hadn't done anything. There's Pooh, he thought. Pooh doesn't have much brain, but he never gets into trouble. He does silly things, and they somehow work out. There's Owl. Owl doesn't have much brain either, but he knows things. He'd know just what to do if he were surrounded by water. There's Rabbit. He didn't learn from books, but he always comes up with a clever plan. There's Conga. She's not exactly clever, but she'd get so worried about Roo that she'd end up doing something helpful without even thinking about it. And there's Eeyore. And Eeyore is always so miserable that he probably wouldn't even mind. But I wonder what Christopher or Robin would do. Then suddenly he remembered a story Christopher or Robin had told him about a man on a desert island who had written something on a piece of paper, put it in a bottle, and thrown it into the sea. And Piglet thought that if he wrote something on a piece of paper and put it in a bottle and threw it into the water, then someone might come and rescue him. He got up from the window and started looking around his house, all the parts that weren't underwater, and at last he found a pencil and a small piece of dry paper and a bottle with a cork. On one side of the paper, he wrote, "Help, Piglet me," and on the other side, "It's me, Piglet. Help, help." Then he put the paper in the bottle, corked it as tightly as he could, leaned out of the window as far as he dared without falling in, and threw the bottle as far as he could splash. Soon it came bobbing back up. He watched it float slowly away until his eyes ached from staring, and sometimes he thought he was still seeing the bottle, and sometimes it was just a ripple in the water, and at last he knew he would never see it again, and that he had done all he could to save himself, and now, he thought, someone else will have to do something. And I hope they do it soon, because if they don't, I'll have to swim, and I don't know how to swim. So I really hope they do something soon." And then he gave a very long sigh and said, "I wish Pooh were here. It's so much friendlier with two." When the rain started, Pooh had been sleeping. And as it rained and rained and rained, he slept and slept and slept. He'd had a very busy day, you see. Do you remember how he discovered the North Pole? Well, he was so proud of it that he asked Christopher Robin if there were any more poles he could discover, as a bear of very little brain might do. "There's a South Pole," said Christopher Robin, "and I suppose there might be an East Pole and a West Pole too, though people don't talk about them much." Pooh got very excited at that and suggested they go on an expedition to find the East Pole. But Christopher Robin had already planned something else with Conga, so Pooh set off to find the East Pole all by himself, whether he discovered it or not. I can't quite remember, but he was so tired when he got home that, right in the middle of dinner, after eating for just over half an hour, he fell fast asleep in his chair. And he slept and slept and slept. Then suddenly, he was dreaming. He was at the East Pole, and it was very cold, the coldest kind of snow and ice everywhere. He had found a beehive to sleep in, but there wasn't enough room for his legs, so he left them sticking out. And wild goosens, the kind that live at the East Pole, came and gnawed the fur off his legs to make nests for their babies. The more they gnawed, the colder his legs got, until suddenly he woke up with a loud ow, and there he was, sitting in his chair with his feet in water. Water everywhere. He splashed over to the door and looked outside. "This is serious," said Pooh. "I need to escape." So he grabbed his largest honey pot and escaped with it to a wide branch of his tree, high above the water. Then he climbed back down and escaped with another pot. And by the time the great escape was finished, there sat Pooh on his branch with 10 honey pots beside him. 2 days later, Pooh was still on his branch, swinging his legs, and only 4 pots of honey beside him. 3 days later, he was still there this time with just 1 pot. 4 days later, there was Pooh, and it was on the morning of the 4th day that Piglet's bottle came floating by. With a loud cry of honey, Pooh dove into the water, grabbed the bottle, and struggled back to his tree. "Bother," said Pooh, opening it. "All that for nothing. What's this bit of paper doing in here?" He pulled it out and looked at it. "It's a message," he said to himself. "That's what it is. And that's a P, and so is that, and that one too, and P stands for Pooh, so it must be a very important message for me. And I can't read it. I need to find Christopher Robin or Owl, or Piglet, one of those clever readers who can read things, and they'll tell me what it says. Only I can't swim. Bother." Then he had an idea, and I think, for a bear of very little brain, it was a very good idea. If a bottle can float, he said to himself, then a pot can float. And if a pot floats, I could sit on top of it if it's a big pot. So he took his biggest pot and corked it up. "All boats need a name," he said, "so I'll call mine the Floating Bear." And with those proud words, he launched his boat into the water and jumped in after it. For a little while, Pooh and the Floating Bear weren't sure which of them should be on top. But after trying out a few positions, they settled with the Floating Bear underneath and Pooh triumphantly paddling along on top with his feet. Christopher Robin lived at the top of the forest. It rained, and it rained, and it rained, but the water couldn't reach his house. It was rather fun at first to look down into the valleys and see the water all around, but after a while, he stayed inside and thought about things each morning. He would go out with his umbrella and place a stick to mark where the water had reached. And every morning after that, he'd go out again and not see his stick, so he'd place a new one at the new edge. And every morning, his walk got shorter than the day before. On the fifth morning, he looked around and saw water everywhere and realized for the first time in his life that he was on a real island. It was very exciting that morning. Owl came flying over the water to visit his friend Christopher Robin. "Say, Owl," said Christopher Robin, "isn't this fun? I'm on an island. The atmospheric conditions have been very unfavorable lately." Owl replied. "What? It's been raining," Owl explained. "Yes," said Christopher Robin. "It has. The flood level has reached unprecedented heights. There's a lot of water about." "Yes," said Christopher Robin. "There is, however, the outlook is becoming more favorable. Any moment now. Have you seen Pooh?" "No, but any moment now." "I hope he's all right," said Christopher Robin. "I've been worried about him. I hope Piglet's with him." "Do you think they're okay, Owl?" "I do hope so. Any moment. Please go and see, Owl, because Pooh doesn't have much brain, and he might do something silly, and I love him so much. So please, Owl, go see if he's all right." "Very well," said Owl. "I'll go back at once." And off he flew. Before long, he was back. "Pooh's not there," he said. "Not there?" He was there. He was sitting on a branch outside his house with 9 pots of honey. "But he's not there anymore. Oh, Pooh!" cried Christopher Robin. "Where are you?" "Here I am," said a hoarse voice behind him. "Pooh!" They ran to each other and hugged. "How did you get here, Pooh?" asked Christopher Robin when he could speak again. "On my boat," said Pooh proudly. "I got a very important message in a bottle, but water had gotten in my eyes, so I couldn't read it. So I brought it to you in my boat." And with those proud words, he handed the message to Christopher Robin. "But it's from Piglet," cried Christopher Robin after reading it. "Is there anything about Pooh in it?" asked the bear, peeking over his shoulder. Christopher Robin read the message aloud. "Oh, those were Piglet peas. I thought they were Pooh peas. We must rescue him at once. I thought he was with you, Pooh. Oh, can you carry him on your back?" "I don't think so. said Owl, after careful thought. It's doubtful that the necessary dorsal muscles. Then would you please fly to him at once and say, "Rescue is coming." Pooh and I will figure out the rescue and come as fast as we can. Don't talk. Owl fly, and still thinking of something to say, Owl flew off. Now then, Pooh, said Christopher Robin, where's your boat? I should mention, said Pooh as they walked to the edge of the island, that it's not exactly a regular kind of boat. Sometimes it's a boat, sometimes it's more of an accident. It depends. Depends on what? On whether I'm on top of it or underneath it. Oh, well, where is it? There, said Pooh proudly, pointing to the floating bear dot. It wasn't what Christopher Robin had expected, and the more he looked at it, the more he thought about how brave and clever Pooh really was. And the more he thought that, the more Pooh looked modestly at his own nose and tried to pretend he wasn't. But it's much too small for both of us, said Christopher Robin sadly. 3 of us, counting Piglet. That makes it even smaller. Oh, Pooh Bear, what shall we do? And then this bear Winnie the Pooh, Fopor, friend of Piglet, Ark, Rabbit's companion, Eeyore's discoverer of the pole, TBC, Tail bringer, and comforter. This very same Pooh said something so clever that Christopher Robin could only stare at him, open-mouthed and wide-eyed, wondering if this really was the same bear of very little brain he loved all these years. We could go in your umbrella, said Pooh. Silence. We could go in your umbrella, Pooh repeated. More silence. We could go in your umbrella, said Pooh, because suddenly Christopher Robin saw they could. He opened his umbrella, turned it upside down in the water, and it floated though it wobbled. Pooh climbed in. He was just about to say it was all right when he realized it wasn't. So, after a little drink he hadn't planned on, he stumbled back to Christopher Robin. Then they both got in together, and it didn't wobble anymore. I'll call this boat the Brain of Pooh, said Christopher Robin, and the Brain of Pooh set sail at once, gracefully spinning southwest. You can imagine Piglet's joy when, at last, the ship came into view. In later years, he liked to think he'd been in terrible danger during the Great Flood, but the only real danger came in the last half hour of his confinement, when Owl, who had just flown over, sat on a branch to comfort him and began telling a very long story about an ant who once accidentally laid a seagull's egg. And the story went on and on, rather like this sentence, until Piglet, listening from his window without much hope, fell quietly and naturally asleep, slowly slipping out the window toward the water until only his toes were hanging on. At which moment, thankfully, a loud, sudden squawk from Owl, which was part of the story, something his aunt had said, woke Piglet just in time to pull himself back to safety and say, "How interesting." She did what? Well, you can imagine his delight when he finally saw the good ship, the Brain of Pooh, with Christopher Robin and Pooh aboard, sailing across the flood to rescue him. And that really is the end of the story, and I'm very tired after that last sentence. So I think I'll stop here, chapter 10. in which Christopher Robin throws a party for Pooh, and we say goodbye on day, when the sun had returned to the forest, bringing with it the sweet scent of May, and all the streams sparkled joyfully as they remembered their graceful shapes, and the little puddles dreamed of the lives they'd seen and the great things they had done. And in the warm stillness of the forest, the cuckoo practiced its call, listening to see if it sounded just right. And the wood pigeons murmured lazily to one another, blaming each other in their comfortable way, but deciding it didn't really matter. On a day like that, Christopher Robin whistled in a very special way that he had. An owl flew out of the 100-acre wood to see what was needed. "Owl," said Christopher Robin, "I'm going to throw a party." "You are you?" said Owl. "And it's going to be a very special party, because it's to celebrate what Pooh did when he did what he did to save Piglet from the flood." "Oh, that's what it's for, is it?" said Owl. "Yes. So, will you go and tell Pooh and everyone else, quickly? Because it's going to be tomorrow." "Oh, tomorrow, is it?" said Owl, trying his best to be helpful. "I'll let them know right away." Owl tried to think of something very wise to say, but couldn't. So he flew off to spread the news. The first one he told was Pooh. "Pooh," he said, "Christopher Robin is throwing a party." "Oh," said Pooh. And then, seeing that Owl expected him to say more, he added, "Will there be those little cakes with pink icing?" Owl felt that talking about little cakes with pink icing was beneath him, so he simply told Pooh exactly what Christopher Robin had said, and then flew off to find a party for me. Thought Pooh, how grand! He began to wonder whether everyone knew it was a special party just for him, and if Christopher Robin had told them about the floating bear and the Pooh brain and all the wonderful things he had thought of and sailed in. Then he started to worry about what if everyone had forgotten and no one remembered what the party was for. And the more he thought like that, the more muddled the party became in his mind, like a dream where nothing quite makes sense. And the dream began to hum in his head until it turned into a kind of song. It was a Pooh's anxious song. 3 cheers for Pooh. For who? For Pooh. Why? What did he do? I thought you knew. He saved his friend from a watery plight. 3 cheers for the bear. Where? For the bear. He couldn't swim, but he rescued him right. Rescued who? Oh, do listen, please. We're talking of Pooh. Of who? Of Pooh? Sorry, I keep forgetting. Well, Pooh was a bear with a very big brain. Say again, a very big brain. A big what? Well, he ate quite a lot, and we're not sure if he could swim or not, but he managed to float in a kind of boat. A kind of what? Well, a sort of pot. So now, let's give him 3 hearty cheers. So now, let's give him 3 hearty cheers. And hope he stays with us for years and years, and grows in wisdom, health, and cheer. 3 cheers for Pooh. For who? For Pooh. 3 cheers for the bear. Where? For the bear. 3 cheers for the wonderful Winnie the Pooh. Just tell me this, what did he do? While all this was going on inside Pooh, Owl was speaking to Eeyore. Eeyore, said Owl, Christopher Robin is throwing a party. Very interesting, said Eeyore. I suppose I'll be sent the leftover bits. Very kind. Quite thoughtful. No need to mention it. You're invited. What's that? An invitation. Yes, I heard you. Who dropped it? It's not something to eat. It means you're invited to the party tomorrow. Eeyore slowly nodded his head. You mean Piglet. The little one with the cheerful ears? That's Piglet. I'll go tell him. No, said Owl, getting flustered. It's you. Are you sure? Of course, I'm sure. Christopher Robin said, all of them. Tell all of them. All of them except Eeyore, I suppose? All of them, said Owl firmly. Ah, said Eeyore. A mistake? No doubt. But still, I'll go. Don't blame me if it rains, but it didn't rain. Christopher Robin had made a long table out of some wooden planks, and everyone sat around it. Christopher Robin sat at one end, and Pooh at the other. On one side sat Owl, Eeyore, and Piglet. On the other side sat Rabbit, Roo, and Conga. And all Rabbit's friends and relations scattered themselves over the grass, waiting hopefully for someone to speak to them, or drop something, or ask them the time. It was Roo's very first party, and he was terribly excited. As soon as they were seated, he began to talk. Hello, Pooh, he squeaked. Hello, Roo, said Pooh. Roo bounced up and down in his seat for a while, then started again. Hello, Piglet, he squeaked. Piglet waved a paw at him, being too busy to say anything. Hello, Eeyore, said Roo. Eeyore waved gloomily. It's going to rain soon, you'll see, he said. Roo looked around to check, but it wasn't raining. Then he said, Hello, Owl. And Owl replied, Hello, my little fellow, very kindly, and went on telling Christopher Robin about an accident that nearly happened to a friend of his that Christopher Robin didn't know. And Conga said to Roo, Drink your milk first, dear. Talk afterward. So Roo, who was drinking his milk, tried to say that he could do both at once, and had to be patted and wiped for quite a while afterward, when everyone had just about eaten their fill. Christopher Robin tapped his spoon on the table, and all the talking stopped except for Roo, who was finishing a loud bout of hiccups, and trying to pretend he was one of Rabbit's relations. This party, said Christopher Robin, is a party because of something someone did, and we all know who it was. This is their party because of what they did, and I have a present for them. And here it is. Then he fumbled around a little and whispered, Where is it? While he was searching, Eeyore gave a grand cough and began to speak. Friends, he said, including newcomers, it is a great pleasure, or perhaps I should say, it has been a pleasure so far to see you all at my party. What I did was nothing, Any one of you except Rabbit, Owl, and Conga would have done the same. Oh, and Pooh. Naturally, my remarks don't apply to Piglet and Roo, as they're rather small, but anyone else would have done just what I did. It just so happened to be me. It wasn't done, I need hardly say, in hopes of getting whatever it is Christopher Robin is now looking for. He raised a front paw to his mouth and stage whispered loudly, "Try under the table, but because I believe we should. All do what we can to help. I feel that we must all of us." Said Roo by accident. "Roo, darling." Said Conga gently, in a scolding tone. "Was that me?" Said Roo, a bit surprised. "What's you're talking about?" Piglet whispered to Pooh. "I don't know," said Pooh, feeling a little downcast. "I thought it was your party." It was. "But I suppose it's not any more. I wish it were yours rather than his," said Piglet. "So do I," said Pooh. "So do I." Said Roo again. As I was saying, Eeyore went on loudly and firmly. As I was saying, before I was interrupted by several loud noises. "I feel that here it is," cried Christopher Robin happily. "Pass it down to silly old Pooh. It's for Pooh." "For Pooh?" Said Eeyore, "Of course. The best bear in all the world." "I might have guessed," said Eeyore. "Well, one can't complain. I've got my friends. Someone spoke to me just yesterday. Or was it last week? I bumped into Rabbit and he said, 'Bother, social life. Always something happening,' but nobody was really listening because they were all saying things like, 'Open it, Pooh.' What is it, Pooh?" "I know what it is." "No, you don't," and other helpful comments like that. And Pooh, of course, was doing his best to open it quickly, but not so quickly as to cut the string. After all, you never know when a piece of string might come in handy. At last, it was open. And when Pooh saw what it was, he nearly fell over. With delight. He was so pleased. It was a special pencil case. There were pencils in it marked with B for bear, and others marked with HB for helping bear, and some marked with BB for brave bear. There was a penknife for sharpening. The pencils, an eraser to rub out anything you'd written wrong, and a ruler for drawing lines so the words could walk in straight rows. The ruler even had inches on it, in case Pooh ever wanted to know how many inches something was. There were blue pencils, red pencils, and green pencils to write important things in blue and red and green. And all these wonderful things lived in little pockets of a special case that clicked shut when you clicked it. And it was all for Pooh. "Oh," said Pooh. "Oh, Pooh," said everyone except Eeyore. "Thank you," Pooh mumbled, but Eeyore was muttering to himself all this. Fuss over writing, pencils, and whatnot. Overrated, if you ask me. Nonsense. Nothing to get excited about later, after everyone had said goodbye and thanked Christopher Robin. Pooh and Piglet walked thoughtfully home together through the golden evening. For a long time, they were silent, When you wake up in the morning, Pooh, said Piglet at last, what's the first thing you say to yourself? What's for breakfast? Said Pooh. What about you, Piglet? I say, I wonder what exciting thing is going to happen today? Pooh nodded thoughtfully. It's the same thing, he said. And what happened next? Asked Christopher Robin. The next morning? I don't know. Could you think about it and tell me one day? You and Pooh, if you really wanted to. Pooh would want to, said Christopher Robin. He gave a deep sigh, picked his bear up by the leg, and walked to the door, dragging Winnie the Pooh behind him. At the door, he turned and said, Are you coming to watch me take my bath? Maybe, I said. Was Pooh's pencil case better than mine? It was just the same, I said. He nodded and went out, and in a moment, I heard Winnie the Pooh bump, bump, bump going up the stairs behind him, and so another story comes to a gentle end. If this tale brought a little warmth to your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you won't miss our next cozy adventure. Here, every night is an invitation to dream, sleep well, and until the next story, good night.